Okay, my name is Alastair Gardiner. I'm a qualified social worker for over 20 years now, and I'm also the director of Nurtured Heart Approach UK. We work across the UK and Europe providing services to help transform the way care is delivered to children and young people. We assist families, schools, and a whole range of fostering, adoption and residential services along with mental health. So my real background, my specialisation is within residential care, that I guess you call group homes in the US. And it has always been a concern of mine how children get labelled violent. And it's the biggest issue that parents and social workers and residential carers and educators face. It's the worry, it's fear. If there has been an incident where a child has been violent in the past, we tend to take that portfolio of the child for the rest of their life. And I think this is how the labels can be very dangerous. And as adults, we become more concerned with the fear. We can really become fearful of children who may have exhibited violence. But where we work with the Nurtured Heart approach in this is recognising those feelings and emotions. I see you're angry. I see you're upset, I see you feel aggressive in this situation, but it's the fearlessness of standing there and be present. You can be present and work with a situation without getting into fight or flight. You can breathe in the aggression, you can breathe in the words, and you can stand in your own greatness in that situation and just really reflect back to the child that they are still using healthy power and control. They are still making good choices, but I'm letting them display their frustration and anger. Violent acts usually last a maximum of 5 seconds. Fear can last days and weeks and years. So if we can accept to work with our own fear in a more positive way by resetting ourselves in different situations, we can operate in a whole different sphere. If a child comes into a culture where physical restraint is taking place, they feel they have to be involved to move up the pecking order. They can't be seen to be stepping back because that could open them up to bullying. Physical restraint is supposed to be the last option, the last resort, but we know that it usually isn't. We know it usually isn't. And if you come into that as a new member of staff, if the culture is built around, you will follow my instruction. What did you say to me? How dare you? Then the member of staff will go into that. And it then becomes dysfunctional. In 25 years of practice with the most difficult young people in a range of settings, working directly with them, there has only been twice in 25 years where violence has occurred to me out of the blue. The other times it's been actually through when violence occurs is by staff recognising triggers but saying things like, oh, he's going to kick off, there's going to be trouble here, you watch, here we go. Well, identifying a trigger for me is the time when I wrap up the 3 stands. And what I can do with that is use that trigger to identify early stages. Look at you, I can see you're feeling angry, I can feel you're feeling really strong emotions, but at this moment in time, you are not hitting, you are not damaging people, you are looking after yourself. And it's really how we can use that as the Nurtured Heart approach, which really can work with a whole range of the most vulnerable groups, but also the most potentially aggressive groups. If you can change the culture, you can change children's view of how they operate in this world. And I think we have to get organisations to understand that we're not there to manage and contain these children, we're there to create wonderful environments and opportunities to flourish for these children. And once staff and parents kind of breathe that in, I have to view this child as if they're my own. Which parent would go physically restraining their child over minor incidents? Which parent would be physically removing them from a classroom with 2 or 3 members of staff? It doesn't match. So we have to get organisations to look at what is the purpose, what are we trying to achieve? Is it we're trying to educate our children? Is it we're trying to parent these children? Is it providing wonderful levels of care for these children? And then we work up from that. When you get organisations who take that bold step that we are going to change the culture, that's when the nurtured heart approach can really bring into life. It has to be absolute clarity. And I think that's a breath of fresh air for staff. Because I know where I stand. You mean I don't have to shout in the face of children? I don't have to scream? I don't have to restrain? That's what we're telling you. How you engage the staff is that you have to demonstrate that. So first of all, you would provide the training, the initial training in the approach, and demonstrates them effective ways to channel how we deal with children who can display those kind of behaviours. Because it's very easy for somebody to come in and say, oh, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this. Well, many staff, that's how they've survived in these environments. They are tough, difficult, hard environments. And I'm certainly not criticising staff who work in environments that are extremely challenging. They want it to change, but they need to feel empowered to do that. So we start looking at clarity, more children's participation in deciding the rules, deciding how we review the home, involvement in the decisions of their home, how we have peer mentoring for staff as well, buddying up, how they have appropriate supervision, how they have positive appraisals, but also how we value them, how we really truly value them. And if staff feel they are valued, they are more likely to engage in the process. We have to change this ethos that when we're looking after children, and especially teenagers who may be in special ed within residential care, that we move away from this management and containment. Because if it is management and containment, just go and hire 10 guys and pay them minimum wage. Get them to stand on the doors. Or if we're going to change a situation, we have to value these people. They're dealing with the highest level of confrontation, anxiety and complex behaviour. We need to respect them and regard them and train them in a way that has enabled them to do the job they initially wanted to do. There was a high level of scepticism, but we trained all the staff and the staff started buying into it. There was quite a bit of resistance. Oh yeah, that's going to work. And another American happy clappy approach that's coming across the water. And they went down from something over a 14-month period, over 100 physical restraints in that year, to bring it down in the next year to 3. Now that's evidence. So that's evidence. And people will say, oh well, the children have been a long time there, they've been settled there, you know. Everybody will try to put a dynamic around that. But that was about great management, great staff team, commitment to the children and implementing clear rules, but also providing amazing relationships with these children. And you can't deny that. It's the proof, it's real, it's there. It's not about being namsy-pamsy. When I hear the word nurtured heart approach, when I first thought, oh no, come on, how am I gonna put that across, you know? It was very difficult, and it was very difficult for me to accept the approach in some ways, because it made me reflect on my practice. So what I've been doing for the last 20 years is wrong. You know, that's tough, because I was a good social worker. But I have to kind of reflect on that in that situation. But if you even go away from the name of the nurtured heart approach and you start looking at the stands, what other approach has absolute clarity about rules, that we won't turn our head if a rule's been broken? What other approach does that? There is no approach that does that. It says even though we're tired, even though we're burnt out, even though we're frustrated, we're not going to let things go, because we know that doesn't help kids. Lack of clarity doesn't help children. But children are also going to understand that when they're on that side of the line and they're keeping to the rules, they are getting recognition for their good choices. We are going to celebrate that. So first-hand experience of that kind of situation was with me working within a young offenders institution and having 2 young people who were set on confrontation. I'm in a room with these 2 15-year-old young men who were looking about 25, who were obviously clearly at odds with each other. And I'm sitting back and I'm watching that go, and I could sit there and I could give a threat and say, if you do anything here, you're going back to the cell, da, da, da. Or I could run away from that situation. But what I can do is stand up and be present I want them to know I'm there. Not as a threat, but they know I'm there. And how I can look at that is that I went straight up and I was, first of all, saying, I can see you're having a disagreement. I can see you're both angry. I can see you are both frustrated. It gives them clarity that I'm not ignoring how they feel in that situation. But what I'm also doing is I'm hijacking them. And even though you are big guys who could knock lumps out of each other at this moment in time, I know you have the strength to resist that. I know you have the intelligence to resist that. I know you have the strength of character to take a step back. It's not like a magic wand. They're still going at it, still going at it. So what I do is I move in between them. They're not close, but I just move in. And I just put both my arms around the back and say, right, we're going out the door. Because I can see that this is going to get out of hand, but I'm going to make the decision that we're going to leave this room. It wasn't physical restraining. There's a difference between leading people away from the situation. And I think because I had got myself in the middle, which wasn't a wrestling middle, it was just present in the middle, they realised that they didn't want to hurt me. A, because the rules for them would have been tough if I'd got hurt in that situation. But I was showing them there was a place where they could go and they could take it without backing down. Because if I'm sort of aiming at one person and they feel they're backing down, it's not going to happen. So you have to bring both with you. So in that situation, it's just a case of that could have gone disastrously wrong. I could have said to him, you dare. If you dare put a finger on him, you know, you're going to get bam, 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 bam. And he would have just not taken that. If I said, oh, you'll have to come through me to get to him, I'm going to get it. Yeah? And if I start taking one out, start physically restraining one on the floor, this one is going to get me. If I say to them, if you carry this on, yeah, if you carry this on, this is going to happen. They'll go for it because in their minds they feel it is going to happen. So it's just really about, that is the real fearlessness and bravery of a situation, is just being there. Now, I just want to make it absolutely clear, if you have two 15-year-olds who are going to go for each other and going to knock lumps out of each other, nothing you can do to stop it. We like to think we can, and of course we will try and move somebody away. If two young people, like two adults, are determined to go and have a ruck or a battle, it's going to happen. But what you can do is, when all that's calmed down, is start again looking at how they're using self-control, positive choices, healthy power. You can start looking at that where they're not together. Because just saying to them, don't you dare, you know, it's pouring petrol on the flames. So there's lots of that. And then there's the younger children, really, you know, the tinies. We get into this demanding situation. You go upstairs. And sometimes you have children who have been involved in a confrontation with the parents, and they're going upstairs to go to the bedroom. And the parent follows them upstairs, and don't you ever do that again. And then the child goes in the bedroom and closes the door. Don't you dare close the door on me. What we can see is that children are constantly looking for way outs. If they want the way out and they're taking the option, let them have the way out. The consequence will still be there because we have the rule. If he's just punched his little brother or sister in the face, there's a consequence for that. That's the rule. So chasing them around and saying, you know, and venting arsplaining about what is done is only building and building and building and building the situation. But I think this is where we've got to get away from this win or lose. I think sometimes as adults and parents and carers, we have to win. And it's not about winning. It's about what we're teaching our young people. You know, how we can reset in that situation. But again, our authority is our clarity. I think when people start viewing what takes place in violent situations, because when we have situations of aggression, things get very vivid and they fly by and they get very colourful and we get very animated. And we have to try and reflect and see what that looks like. And if adults saw themselves in these situations, they'd be shocked, because we'd all like to say, and when we have difficult children, that we haven't been in those crazy situations, and it happens. What are they supposed to do if they can't restrain? And that's fear-based. You know, if I've got a kid threatening to punch me in the face, where do I go? And what I say is, you don't have to go. You don't have to run out of the room screaming and panicking, and you don't have to get into a physical altercation. You be present and you lead that situation. And that, when you view that, is so, so powerful. And I think that's where adults need to get their head around. It's not about winning or losing. We are building the foundation on is the relationship we already have with these children. And I give the example in the presentation, which is something I call the 38-degree principle. And it's the way I look at how avalanches and slips happen. Yeah? There is a point to this. And what it is that we have, that when we are involved in these situations of violence and aggression, is we tend to focus on stand 3. So all about rules, all about clarity. If we look how an avalanche is formed, is what happens is you have like 3 or 4 different layers of snow. And I like to look at it like the stands. So the first layer on the ground is a very light dusting, and it's a bit wet and it's light snow. And that's the stand 1. So it may be that we are leaking our fears about what's going to happen, if we're sharing with others that there's going to be trouble, if we are feeding back to children, here we go again, yeah? And then we get a second layer of snow, and that's stand 2. Yeah, if we're not telling kids about the healthy power they're showing in self-control, yeah, it's a bit loose, isn't it? We're not really sticking. But then we can be rock solid about rules, clarity, reset, and we think we've done everything. But what happens, an avalanche doesn't happen from the top, it doesn't happen at 98 degrees, it happens at a low level. And that's what I see, is that what happens is you can be concrete about your rules, but if you're not demonstrating to the children what that healthy power is, if you're not leaking the information about, oh, here we go again, these 2 layers are going to fall and the rest falls with it. And we end up with these situations of people say, where did that come from? You know, how did that happen? You know, it was going great, and all of a sudden we're ended up with this massive violent incident. And this is because we are not concentrating on all 3 stands. We feel if we're dealing with aggressive and violent children that all we have to do is get the rules right, the consequences, the clarity, the reset. And that's just one part. Without the other 2 parts, everything's going to go. So I explain that to staff, so when the child is building up, when they're demonstrating those triggers, I can see you're rubbing your head, I can see you're frustrated, but even though you are making good choices. You could go, you could be creating now, but I can see you're going to leave this room, you're going to go outside, and you're going to take the deep breaths that I know that works for you. So what I'm doing there is, I'm giving those stand 1s. That's the stand 1. I'm not going to buy into the leaking that this is going to happen. And within the stand 2, I'm also demonstrating, and look at you now. Look at the healthy power. Look at the decisions you are making. Yeah, you could be breaking the rules. You are not breaking the rules. And that gives the concrete and the stability that stops the flow of everything just dropping. Yeah, and that's the power. And that's what I'm trying to teach to parents and to staff and teachers, is that don't get obsessed with the consequences, rules and reset. It's an essential part, but no more essential than stand 1 or stand 2. And it's the same the world over. There's no difference on what's happening in these, working with very challenging kids. The same problems are occurring in New Jersey as there are in Manchester, as there are in London, as there are in Brisbane. And I think what we have to recognise, the staff, the frontline workers can do what they can do, but the organisation also has to look at its policies and procedures. Because the organisation can't sit back and watch staff and children being hurt. You know, we'll stick to the same old ways, but what's happening is we're ending up with lots of people being hurt, injured, and young people getting criminalised, so they may get arrested for the behaviour because a physical restraint is being put on and a member of staff gets injured. So we end up down this criminalisation route. Now, what we have to start looking is organisational change. And if we start viewing about what those policies and procedures are, they clearly state that no child, no member of staff should be hurt. not just no staff should be hurt, or not just no children should be hurt. We have to create environments, and that has to come through clarity in the policies and procedures of the organisation, and the supervision and the appraisal. And if we are not taking those steps preventative through relationship working with these children, more children are going to get hurt. And that's the whole dimension that we have to change.